Welcome to the Post-Foundation Options webinar. What, where, and who can inform a realistic option decision? This webinar is the second in a series of career planning webinars for foundation trainees produced by the London KSS careers team. Its focus is on the thorough investigation of options available to you after completing your foundation program, where you can get further information, and who can help. In terms of your options, this webinar will focus on the following three areas: specialty training, including run-through, core and ACF programs, F3, and non-clinical work, giving an overview and identifying key resources and links to gain further information, which will be available at the end of this webinar. Effective career exploration is the second aspect of the SCAN career planning model. And if you haven't done so already, it is a really good idea to watch Part 1 Self-Awareness webinar, also available on this webpage. Self-awareness informs the personal criteria that will allow you to target your research into post-foundation options to make more realistic career decisions. So what types of training are currently available post-foundation, and how can you effectively research them to see if they meet your needs? This slide should be familiar and outlines the current structure of postgraduate medical education. Run-through or coupled programs build on existing competencies year by year from ST1 to 8, whereas the core or uncoupled programs in internal medicine, ICM, surgery, psychiatry, as well as anaesthetics and ACCS, acute care common STEM, deliver an initial broader curriculum from ST1 to 3 before trainees reapply to higher, more specialised training at ST4 to 8. Core medicine training has recently changed from a 2-year to a 3-year internal medicine curriculum. However, medical trainees can elect whether to apply for higher medical specialties after 2 years of internal medical training, if the higher medical specialty they are interested in applying to is generally non-acute in nature. Further information on this can be found on the IMT recruitment website, listed at the end of this webinar. So what could you apply to? This slide lists current core and run-through programs, but it should be noted that new run-through pilot programs can be introduced each year. Recent examples have been in surgery with the IST internal surgical program, the child and mental health and emergency medicine pilot programs. Different pilots can be run in different HEE training regions, and therefore checking the Oriel recruitment website is the best source of up-to-date information. It is also worth considering how sure you are of committing to a run-through program in a more specific specialty area than undertaking more broad initial clinical training. So what information may help you make a specialty choice? What should you pay particular attention to in researching specialty areas of interest? We will firstly look at web-based information. Specialty information. A variety of websites offer key specialty information, including details of training routes, working life, case studies, and tips for getting in. These include the Health Careers, Royal Colleges, BMA, and BMJ websites. Also, if you're a member of the BMA, it is also worth utilising the BMA Specialty Explorer, which is an online questionnaire tool which matches specialties to your individual preferences, skills, and interests. Look at the links section on the Foundation Doctors pages for further details. Person specifications. The specialty training website contains all ST1 and ST3 specialty person specifications, as well as current and historic competition ratio data. Understanding what is required to meet the person specifications of any specialty of interest is a key consideration. Which areas do you feel you have strong evidence, and which present possible gaps in your skills and experience? This can inform developmental priorities for Foundation Year 2. You should also consider eligibility rules here. For example, some specialties will only allow up to 18 months specialty experience in addition to foundation years before specialty training commences. Important if you are considering taking an F3 or F4 year, which could involve trust-based jobs. Competition ratios. In terms of competition ratios, consideration should be given to what specialties are more competitive and less competitive, and the evidence required for strong application. Also, what is the direction of travel in terms of post-consultant options? Is the specialty growing or contracting? In terms of fill rates, how important is the location of training to you? What are the pros and cons of training outside London or the Southeast? For example, in the Midlands, Northwest, Northeast and Wales, these areas are usually not as competitive as London or the Southeast. Further information on fill rates can be found on the National HE specialty recruitment pages. Different deaneries lead on national specialty recruitment, so do refer to the HE recruitment pages for further information. The PGMDE portal. This portal is a key port of call for any general or specialty specific recruitment queries. A comprehensive FAQ section is available, as well as the option of submitting individual query requests. We will now look at competition ratios in more detail. You can see here that community sexual and reproductive health, public health, and cardiothoracic surgery are the most competitive specialties highlighted in this recent 2020 competition ratios table. However, remember, these application figures can include those applicants who are intending to take an F3 and see this as run through, as well as those who are applying for a number of specialties. As mentioned, the specialty training website has competition ratio data, including numbers of posts, applications for all ST1, ST3 specialties going back to 2018. So moving on to the importance of experience in terms of resource research, getting a good understanding of a specialty in relation to opportunities and challenges should also be gained from direct experience or speaking with those that have it. This will also give you awareness of the politics, hierarchies, and culture that can appear in specialties and how this links with your core values and priorities. You should make the most of rotations in specialties of interest, asking questions of seniors and getting involved in projects. However, if you don't have the option of direct experience, think about the following. Tasters. You've probably utilised some time for tasters in F1. However, you are also entitled to take up to 5 days in F2. This can be an excellent way to gain understanding of a specialty of interest and can be highlighted on subsequent specialty applications. Rotations or F3 posts. For those considering an F3, clinical fellowships, locum posts are also a good opportunity, and they give more flexibility than fixed-term posts, where on-calls will be limited. The BMJ conference. The BMJ conference is held each October, and it's an opportunity to network, ask questions, and learn about different specialties and training from doctors currently in those specialties. BMJ Live is a free online global event for health professionals, offering clinical webinars, leadership skills, well-being, and career development. And finally, networking. Who is in your current network that could support you? How could you develop your network to gain experience or gain understanding of specialties of interest? We'll now look at this in a bit more detail. There can be a negative, uncomfortable perception amongst some doctors and other health professionals that the term or concept of networking can equate with an inauthentic, competitive, selfish, or self-centered and grasping set of values more in alignment with elements of the private sector than those that shape the NHS and its team-focused ethos. You may also have developed limiting assumptions from previous experiences that people you interact with won't help you. However, it is worth considering that in its purest form, networking is simply about making and building lasting mutually beneficial relationships with other people with who you have a shared interest to gain or share information and advice. You've probably done this informally many times already, simply by talking to colleagues about their work, asking questions of speakers at conference events, or developing research, teaching, or audit working groups. So thinking about this, who do you know and who do they know? In terms of developing your network, To help understand specialties of interest, it is worth initially considering casual links or dormant ties, individuals that you may have worked with, studied with in the past, who now work in a particular specialty, or those that went to the same medical school. Connections can tend to be more successful if you already have some link. Think about contacting medical school alumni through LinkedIn who may work in your specialty of interest. So moving on to the next option, academic clinical fellowships, ACFs. ACFs are an alternative 3-year academic specialty training program designed for doctors who wish to develop their research interests alongside clinical training. This is an excellent option for those considering a master's or preparation for a PhD. Key points to consider here are they can be applied for at ST1, ST2, or ST3, so you can apply after commencing a non-academic program, and your training schedule will be varied if successful. The research component of the 3-year program is 25%. This can be in 3-month blocks or spaced throughout the year. You can put in both ACF and non-academic specialty applications for the same specialty. However, if the ACF application is successful, the applicant must still meet the minimum appointable clinical threshold of the non-academic training. Further information can be found on the NIHR, the National Health Research website, which oversees ACF recruitment. And finally, I just wanted to bring up the medical recruitment timetable. As you'll see with ACFs, the timetable starts in October when applications open with an interview window in November to late December with offers in January. Whereas the specialty training timetable starts slightly later in mid-November when applications open, and interviews take place between late December and early March. You'll also see there the ST3, ST4 recruitment timetable, which normally opens in early February, although during the pandemic, it started slightly earlier. So that summarizes specialty training. We will now look at other options, including F3. So if you were considering F3, you are not alone. This slide destination data from the latest Foundation School Survey of Foundation leavers. And it shows that UK-wide figures in 2010, 81% of trainees went straight into training. However, in 2020, 38% went straight into training programs. The increase in those working in non-training roles or leaving medicine completely for a variety of reasons. But first things first, reset, rebalance, recharge. What I'm trying to say here is don't feel guilty. It's perfectly acceptable to take some time during an F3 to reset, rebalance, recharge from the challenges of the foundation program and the impact of the COVID pandemic on your training. Reflect on what you have enjoyed, not enjoyed, want to change, and how much does medicine fulfill you. So consider the following. It's an option to get away from your normal life so you can reflect on how and why you are feeling this way. Medical schools rarely tell students how they can diversify their careers. You don't have to be on a one-step train to consultancy. You can change trains or take a car to the next station and then jump on again. Doctors can take career breaks, medical and non-medical. Also think about, what did you used to enjoy about medicine? What gave you fulfillment and satisfaction? Sometimes in the NHS, it can be difficult to like medicine all the time, and the recent political decisions may have upturned some unrest in your mind. In these situations, it is hard to know if a change could refresh your love of it. Could a different specialty, some part-time work or a year or two out, give you that sense of perspective? So in detail, what may be some of your F3 options? Firstly, we'll look at fellowships. Fellowships are available in a variety of areas such as clinical, teaching, research management and leadership, digital and entrepreneurial development. Usually they're one-year posts split between project work, teaching, and clinical practice. Some are 100% teaching, research, and management. However, some clinical fellowships can be shorter. What should be noted is that your foundation competencies last for 3 years, so you can extend your fellowship without losing your clinical competencies. The fellowships are usually ST1 equivalent, but always check of eligibility, and they can be based in trusts or health-related organisations such as HEE or CCGs or PCNs, so clinical. Some offer additional qualifications, such as the PG certificate in medical education or the PG certificate in leadership health, and they are usually advertised on NHS jobs. Further information can be found on the F3 resources link on this slide. We now look at working and volunteering abroad, which are always popular options for F3. However, due to consideration will be needed as to the impact of any possible COVID restrictions this year, I recommend using some of the excellent websites for additional research, such as Plan My F3, Messley, BMJ, and Adventure Medic, to name a few. But briefly, what should you consider? Areas of work: secondary and primary care, expedition medicine, and working for charities are all popular, offering options in clinical, education, and project work. However, consider areas of need, especially in countries such as Australia. This may limit additional qualifications. Various agencies offer medical jobs abroad, but you should check out services they offer in terms of visas, accommodation, etc., and get everything in writing. You can also approach hospitals direct with your CV. In terms of expedition and volunteering options, level of experience and any additional qualifications required should be considered. Time and money. Organising working abroad or volunteering abroad can take up to 6 months from job offer to actual start. Examinations, medicals, visas, registration, training, flights, courses should also be considered in terms of organising your time frame. Insurance, travel and indemnity. Just a note here in that it is your responsibility to organise this for any trips abroad or work abroad. The GMC registration or licence to practice. As you're aware, being registered with a licence to practice, if you're working as a doctor in the UK, you will need to be registered with a licence. In order to maintain your licence, you're required to collect supporting information about your full scope of practice, have an annual medical appraisal conducted by an appropriately trained appraiser, and revalidate your licence every 5 years. This is an important consideration for both those wishing to work abroad and those thinking of taking trust grade or locum jobs in the UK. You may not need a licence to work abroad, but if you do keep your licence, you will have to meet the evidence required and possibly revalidation requirements. Further information can be found on the GMC website. Specialty interview timeline. You really need to identify your timeline in terms of working abroad and your potential availability for specialty interviews. These may well revert to face-to-face rather than virtual interviews, so you should think about your availability between December and March when the interviews for specialty training are usually conducted. And obviously, if you're thinking of the ACF route, even earlier. And in terms of the BMG Careers Fair, as mentioned previously, the fair is held every October, but I've noted it here as it holds a variety of very good workshops or webinars on working abroad or volunteering for further information. We now turn to further study. Again, further study is a popular F3 option with trainees, whether it is completing and entering posters or presentations, completing audits, or undertaking further qualifications such as tropical medicine, medical education, ATLS, or research competencies. Use the opportunity to undertake a postgraduate certificate or master's in a relevant area. Loans and scholarships can be available through the student loan scheme or individual higher education institutions. The Higher Education Prospects website, which is listed on this slide, has a useful postgraduate course search function and further information on postgraduate loans. Turning now to staff grade and locum roles. Specialty training is not for all, and trust grade locum work can offer a variety of short or long-term benefits to doctors, such as more autonomy in choosing shifts and getting experience without the limitations on work-life balance, such as nights or on-calls. Trust grade roles can be fixed term or permanent, with opportunities to develop expertise in a specialist clinical area. Competencies can still be aggregated using the CSER or CEGPR frameworks as outlined by the GMC. It should, however, be noted collating and gaining sign-off for evidence is the individual trust doctor's responsibility, as is seeking out training and research opportunities. Jobs are usually organised in-house around April-May time for some trusts, but they are also advertised on NHS jobs if unfilled. But what if your interests lie beyond medicine? We'll now be looking at alternatives to medicine. This slide lists a variety of alternative jobs to medicine that are popular with trainees and links where you can get further information. However, in the right way, stop Googling alternative careers to medicine. You're not limited just to these jobs. Sit down and think about what you want to do. Years of medical school and postgraduate training has given you a wealth of transferable skills. Go back to the tips and exercises highlighted in the self-awareness webinar. What are your interests? How might these be explored further? What are you curious about? What would you like to research further? How open-minded are you? Is there really only one path to follow? Are you adopting a should rather than a could mentality to your career planning? And what opportunities could this mindset be shutting down? For example, does more of a portfolio career plan work for you? How could you make this happen? Is your attitude to risk also limiting your exposure to new opportunities that may follow a different route? What could you do to minimize your aversion to risk? For example, organize a taster in an area of interest or develop your network. We now come to evaluation and next steps. So reflecting on what you've learned in this webinar, what will be the one step that you'll be committing to? What will you do and when? Make a note in your calendar or task list on your phone or in your notebook. Whatever your timescale, make a plan to undertake certain actions and commit to a date and how you will achieve this objective. You should also note that in addition to these foundation level career planning webinars, you are eligible to book one-to-one career planning appointments with specialist PSU careers advisors. Simply complete the application form link here. Further information can also be found on the PSU Foundation Doctors web pages. Further information on the topics raised in this webinar can be found by clicking on the links highlighted here, which can also be found on the Foundation Doctors web pages. Finally, this was the second in our series of career planning webinars for Foundation trainees. Be sure to visit the Foundation Doctors web pages on our website listed here and look out for the next webinars in the series, which will be available in September, covering specialty applications and interviews in more detail. Until then, good luck with exploring your post-foundation options.